Okay, so today we are going to be talking about the brainstem and the functions of the brainstem. So you've got this drawing in front of you so you can kind of label along with me. And we're going to start with labeling the cerebrum. So that's this whole thing up here, the cortex. And then we've got our cerebellum, which we've just discussed a bunch. So you can see this whole thing is our cerebellar hemispheres. Okay, we've got a right and a left. We've got our spinal cord. So we are discussing the brainstem, which is this section here. Okay, but the medulla, which we're going to talk about, talks to our spinal cord. So it connects our whole brain basically to our spinal cord. So you have to label the spinal cord. And as part of the spinal cord, we see that we have two sets of tracks. We have a track that's our dorsal column, so sensory information coming up, crossing over at the medulla and ascending to the cortex. And then we also have our motor columns, which is information coming down, crossing at the medulla again, and heading down towards the body with descending information. Now let's talk about each of our sections of our spinal cord. And we're going to start with our midbrain. Now, like the name suggests, the midbrain is in the middle of our brain. Midbrain. You see how that works? It literally is in the middle of our brain here. Now, our midbrain is involved in a bunch of different stuff. It sits right next to the basal ganglia, which is up top here. Okay. It is part of our auditory information, so stuff from our ears is going to come in here and help with processing of some of that auditory information. It's part of our pain matrix and our pain, chronic pain issues, but one of the biggest things that it does is it relays information from the cerebrum to the cerebellum. So it's a pathway or a bridge between the two, and that this information then could potentially go down into the spinal cord. Okay. So that's our midbrain. Our second section is our pons, and our pons is also a bridge, but instead of going between the cerebrum and the cerebellum, we're going to see that the pons connects our two cerebellar hemispheres. So it helps with information going from right to left and back again. So it's very involved in the cerebellum. It also does some sensory analysis for the cerebellum. So when we talk about the stopping of all the sensory information coming in, it stops at the pons there, and the pons says, is this important for the cerebellum to know? And if it decides yes, then it sends the signal on to the cerebellum. If it decides no, it discards the signal. So that way we see that it is the same function as the thalamus is to the cortex. Our final section is the medulla. Now, our medulla is a very, very important area because our medulla is involved in our vital signs. It helps with cardiovascular and respiratory control. We're going to see that it also has some cranial nerves coming off of it that help us with swallowing, and also help coordinating the motion of our head and collaborating with the eyes to maintain vision. So like if you're looking at something and you turn your head, you're able to maintain that visual of an object, so that your eyes are actually moving as your head is moving in concert with it, opposite directions. So it maintains a line of vision and assists with that. And I always laugh because if you've watched the movie Waterboy with Adam Sandler, the coach at some point in time, he says, that boy must not have a medulla oblongata. And that bothers me because he would be dead if he didn't have a medulla oblongata. So that's how you're going to remember that the medulla is involved in vital signs, because Adam Sandler would be dead if he didn't have one of those. Has nothing to do with cortical function, which I think is what the coach is going after. Okay, hopefully you've got your information down on the brainstem.